Ladies and gents, welcome to what I think is going to be quite an interesting little talk through. We've got Mr. Paul Reed-Smith here. I don't need to introduce this man, but I feel it dutiful to do so. Paul is graciously here to do a clinic with us this evening, but he's also given us some of his time this afternoon just to talk through some brand new things from PRS that, as of yet, no one else has seen. I think that's fair to say. By the time you're watching this video, this is going to be brand new. So, we're going to talk mostly about what I'm holding, but also what I'm plugged into. So, what I want to ask you first, Paul, is how did you get Robben Ford to have a guitar with your name on it?
I saw him at a dealer in America, and I had made him some guitars a long time ago. And I said, Robben, I've figured the pickup thing out that has always plagued me making guitars for you. He goes, really? I said, yeah, I've got one over my shoulder. He said, let's plug it in. So he drags me in the other room, plugs it in this little Fender amp, and he goes, it's way better. Oh, wow, this is way better. Oh, I like this. And so it was the beginning of us making him some guitars, and he had very specific ideas about the instrument, what he wanted out of the pickups, what he wanted out of the wiring, that he wanted the headstock to be bigger and more in relation to what he's been looking at size-wise his whole life, you know. And he came to our shop many times. He's an incredibly sensitive artist who understands if the frets are dead level or not without ever measuring them. He can tell you, well, you know, there's a little something wrong with the G string on the 7th fret, and I'll check it. It'll be out a quarter of a piece of paper. I mean, literally like a half a thousandth out, and he caught it. And I like that about Robben. The thing you know, he's a wonderful human being, but he's got a sound in his hands that you can hear in the first couple notes. Oh my God, Robben Ford's playing. That's the end of that.
This is the thing. So he's as guitar players go, I'm a big Robben fan, and he's a free spirit. You know, whatever he plays, he picks it for a reason, of course, you know, a specific piece of equipment, but he sounds like himself. And his intent is the same. So for him to distill that into one instrument that he wanted to put his name on, I think is very interesting. And you have a very good history of working with players like that. So you already said that you built guitars for him, and I presume that would have been the template.
Long time ago. He really liked an instrument that I'd made, and I showed it to him at the Messe in Frankfurt. And I made him one, and it never, he tried really hard to get it to work for him, but it never did. And there was, at the time, I think the problem that was that I should have just given him my guitar, the guitar he loved. But I didn't have the wherewithal at the time to do that. I should have just said, okay, it's yours. Because I could have made another one. Yeah, but I wasn't thinking.
It's your guitar.
Well, I didn't give it away. Yeah, I did. I should have. It's just crazy that I didn't.
So for context, was there a model currently before this existed in your range that compared to that guitar? That, you know, to give some context to what.
Well, the guitar I was showing him was an early McCarty.
Okay.
It was a really early McCarty. Even before private stock. It was a long time ago. But the thing that I admire is that he was, when I told him what the problem was and that I had fixed it, he was interested. He was like, okay, let's give it a try. And I, you know, he was open-minded. He wasn't closed-minded. He is looking for tools to do his job. And his job is to play really melodic, beautiful guitar. It's a combination of a whole bunch of things. I mean, his knowledge of jazz and blues, and he plays like a saxophone player.
That's a very good observation.
And I've accused him of it several times, and he basically said he thinks like a sax player. He used to play sax.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
now, if I remember correctly, look, Robben walks on a stage, plugs in, and this sound comes out of his amp that nobody else has. And it's been that way, whether he's playing through a pedal and a twin or whatever, it just comes out of his hands. I mean, he somehow has this extraordinary ability to get what he's thinking and what he's in his hand sound to come out of the amp. So it's interesting. I get a very different sound, but I'm pretty good at being able to get any amp to do it.
well, I played this guitar this morning. The guitar, not myself,
Yeah.
the guitar sounds like Robben. And
Does
I
it
don't
really?
know what it is.
Show me. Play it.
It's not me, it's the guitar, okay? Check it out.
That's very interesting.
Now you-
Nobody's done that except for him in front of
I
me.
didn't-
I've never heard
I
anybody
didn't
else
know I
play
was
this
gonna do
model other than him.
Okay, so
I've never spent much time with this model. What I've spent time with was with him trying to hone it in for what he wanted.
So, how do you do that? How do you command wood and wire in such a way that an artist a long-standing artist, the voice of whom you know well, how do you manipulate this to do that
All right,
for
well,
them?
I knew how to get the neck shape right. I knew how to get the frets in the right place. I knew how to get the frets glued in and them all level and the nut in the right place. And he wanted the headstock shape changed and all that. That's easy. The hard part was, here's the pickup we've been futzing with magnet 1. Here's the same pickup with magnet 2. Here's the same one with magnet 3. He goes, I like the second magnet. So that was easy. And then he wanted all these single coil tones. The way this works is that when you hit the switch, it's making it single coil, but we're using electronic parts to hone the frequency in the way he wanted.
Okay.
And so he's been of all the different guitars we sent, he was very, very particular about how it was wired. There's about 6 wires coming out of each of these pickups so that when you hit this little switch, it does what he wants.
So is that extra windings or?
No, it's actually extra taps.
Okay.
There's more wires coming out of those things than a normal humbucker, let me tell you.
Okay, well, before we go any further then, that was a little driven, so I want to hear your thoughts on that
Yeah,
with
so
a cleaner sound.
make it dead clean and try the bass pickup in and out, right? All right, so do the same thing with it, switch up. So you lost some gain, but you also, the frequency raised up a little bit. Did you hear that?
And it has its muscle back. And this is something that it's a little bit of a gripe, almost, for me personally. And when I see this, usually what it tells me is a guitar builder maybe didn't have the utmost confidence in their pickups to do their job by themselves. And they resorted to some trickery to allow the player to get around that issue. But
that's exactly the opposite of what happened.
This is what I know.
He really liked one of the prototypes with the switch on it that made a single coil and was using it to record a record with. And then he said, I got to have that switch. It's like, okay, well, we'll do it.
So I don't want to put you in Robben's mind because that wouldn't be fair. But do you think you caught him or he caught you perhaps at just the right time? Because I know that he's sort of transitioned slightly to some different amplifiers that he's playing through, and his music has changed as well. His style of playing is still Robben Ford, but I don't know, maybe he's relaxed a little bit.
He sees himself as in transition. I asked him about that, and talk to your daughter and Tiger Walk and all that stuff. For him, that's in the past. He's got a new mission. Mm-hmm. He's got a new way that he's attacking his music. I think he's playing a little cleaner than he used to. But you'd have to interview Robben about that.
Absolutely. That's not fair to ask you that question, but I'm curious to know, because like I said earlier, you have
what a musician,
a
oh my
Robben
God.
in your mind, and how does this fit a new Robben, or is this, did you have the history of his music?
I wasn't going there. I was just trying to get him happy. I just wanted him to really enjoy the instrument. He doesn't use instruments he doesn't enjoy. He'll put it back in the rack. You got a rack of guitars over there, he'll grab another one. He doesn't like using an instrument he doesn't love. And so he worked really hard to get it to a point where he could like it. He doesn't want to be restricted. A free spirit was a good term. He wants to be able to do new things all the time. He's got a guitar that I made him a long time ago that I bought back. I got it back and I made it a guitar that I was using. And after I'd done the tweaks to it of what we'd done for the black guitar, he got the red one back. He goes, "Oh, I really like this guitar now," because it had been adjusted. Okay. Look, old violins are in the shop constantly. It's okay that these instruments get tweaked. Really good instruments need a really good repair person to be working on it. Rhonda Smith came to me once, the bass player playing in Beck's band, and she had really struggled with this one problem with the bass for a long, long time. And when I just grabbed it from her, ran upstairs, fixed it, brought it back, her jaw hit the floor. She's like, "You fixed it?" I went, "Yeah, we fixed it." And she was like, "Well, I found my new repair shop," and she's had some troubles with her instruments, and they always come back in flake cases, and we work on them. You got to have somebody to take care of your stuff. I mean, you've got some old amplifiers over here that I heard stories today about how they got fixed, and who fixed them and how they did it. I mean, from what I understood, they turned one of them on and smoke came out of it the next second, right? As the story goes.
Well, as you make them, so you know as well, but amplifiers are a totally different beast.
Actually, they're exactly parallel beasts. When we made the Hendrix amp,
how so?
when we made the Hendrix amp, I was blown away about how much of his tone was coming from the amp. It was a series event. He had the guitar, his hands, his thoughts, his feel, the guitar, the pedals, the amp, the speaker cabinet. They all are important.
Now that's a nice segue there, Paul, because we happen to be plugged into a second product from PRS that kind of marries up quite nicely with this, I feel, the spirit of it at least. So we've got the 20-watt version now of the Hendrix amp.
Well, it gets released today, right?
By the time you see this, this will be available. Now, the reason it kind of makes sense to make a slightly less powerful version of that amp, because the 100-watt is phenomenally brutal. I said this to you earlier, in a nice way.
It's brutal in a nice way.
But you really,
that's very
really
English.
I just wish it was a little quieter.
In a nice way.
So, with that said,
we say things close to that, but not quite that way.
A bit like these questions for you. I'm sure they're probably a bit brutal, but
the 100-watt is brutal.
So
when we use the 100-watt to record in my studio, we plug into the amp upstairs, run a big, thick power cable for the speaker cabinet downstairs, mic it up, close the door, and stay away from it.
So do you subscribe to the common amp theory that all the brands out there, what they like to do is they say, we've bottled that 100-watt magic and we've just made it 20 watts. It's easy. We just made it smaller. We made it quieter.
Did we say that?
No. So physics says that can't happen. So what did you do differently with this? Did you try and capture that lightning in a bottle, or did you treat this as a whole new amp?
We made the exact same circuit as the 100-watt with two lesser power tubes.
So this is running
that's like
that's the
50-watt amp, but only 20 watts. It's the exact same amp. The one thing we did different is we put a master volume on it. Now, every single time I send Eric Johnson an amp, he disconnects the master volume. When he got that amp and he got one of the prototypes, he goes, "The master works, I'll leave it." Which I thought was beautiful.
And that's Eric Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
renowned tone guy.
Yeah. And he likes it because he uses it for lead. He's got 3 different amps, one for crunch rhythm, one for clean, and one for lead. He's using that little 20 for lead. I like Eric because he teaches me so much. I'll send him something, and his feedback is always, there's some learning in it every single time. He and I have been buying amps from a dealer here in the UK, these old Marshalls. He likes old Marshalls, right? Really old ones. And we found a perfect one. I mean, you can have 10 of them and they all sound different, right? We found one we thought was perfect, and that has a transformer in it we think sounds as good.
Okay.
So
Big statement.
it is. Well, do you think it sounds good?
Let me tell you. Because I haven't played this amp much. So I set it kind of clean. Paul immediately came in and changed the settings. And I trust this man, so I trust his judgment better
you
than mine.
had the mid-range turned down, and you had some of the. I just put it in my standard setting.
Okay.
Now, when he uses the amp, he's got the treble barely cracked, he's got the mid-range barely cracked, he's got the bass barely cracked, and the presence barely cracked, and he's using two cables, one into the treble channel, one into the bass channel, and he's using those as tone controls. Those treble channel and bass channel are wired together inside the amp. So I adjusted it, not the way Eric does it, but more the way I do it.
Okay, so we're still pretty clean for now, but we will dirty it up a little as well. Has to be done, of course. So here's the clean sound. I'm going to not split the pickups, so this is the true test of a clean sound to me. What the humbuckers do to it. Let's check it out.
So when you're playing one note, it's clean as a whistle. When you're playing two notes, it starts to break up. When you play three, it starts to really break up. You heard that, right? That's very normal for those old amps.
And how do you get that to be commanded by 20 watts? Because you know when you plug into 100 watt, you feel that dynamic range, but sometimes with lesser powered amps, 20 and below, you lose that sensibility because everything is compressed.
But you don't know whether that preamp circuit's exactly the same one that was in the 100. You don't know. So I'm telling you that's exactly the same circuit that's in the 100.
So it's more in the front end that...
I didn't change the front end. It was when we opened the amp at Paul Allen's museum, it wasn't a super lead. It wasn't a JTM 45. It was a combination of things. They'd modified the amp a lot. It's the amp that he used at Woodstock. And they had done a ton of stuff to the amp to get it to not blow quads, which is a quad is all 4 power tubes. And they had done a pile of things, lowered the voltages, all kinds of things to make sure that the quad didn't go boom while he's playing live. Customer service was really important to him. He wanted that amp to make it through the gig. That was clear from opening it up. Everybody's got to have the lay-down transformer. They'd changed the power transformer to have lower voltage. They had done a bunch of things. I even suspect it had 6550s in it at some point. So when we did the circuit, what I was stunned by, and you just did it, which is the bass pickup sounds like a treble pickup. Did you notice that when you were playing it? There was one chord that I played here. Let me have the guitar. There was one chord that I played when we first made the prototype that kind of was indicative. It sounded like Hendrix. Hendrix's bass pickup. It sounded like the treble pickup, but it was on the bass pickup. I was like, that's very interesting. And it does that when you turn the gain all the way up.
Okay.
It still sounds like the treble pickup, which stunned me. I was like, well, no wonder. It's
extremely fat.
Yeah.
But the clarity is there, and that's that's the golden ratio of Marshall sound. So how do
But
you...
this was not a stock amp that I opened.
Well, this is what's interesting, because you've managed to translate that from being Hendrix's workhorse amp into something that is going to work for a huge number of different players in different styles and so on. So,
by the way, people don't want to sound like Hendrix. When we sent all these amps, the 50 and the 100 to all these artists, you know what they said? Works with my pedal board. It sounds like me. They wanted to sound like them. They didn't want to sound like him. I thought everybody was going to want to play Hendrix licks. They weren't. They were, when he sent it to Lettieri, he's like, this works for me.
I saw he's been playing the amp recently.
For a long time, yeah.
So, in your estimation, then, having built the 3 different variants of the amp, and you say the preamp is the same throughout, who is the 20 watt for?
You,
outside of just the
you, me, anybody who needs. Look, this is where people don't get it, and maybe I'm not trying to be cocky. I'm just telling you, at the time, Hendrix's rig was the PA. The singer, I just bought an old Marshall PA 100 watt top and the 2 columns. That was what the singer bought at the store. All right, the drummer didn't have a PA. He was just hitting it, right?
Yeah.
As they said, you need bigger sticks. They used to tell the drummers that.
I mean, it works.
Right.
Well, it worked.
But now with in-ear monitors, and the way it's going on, you're recording this, it doesn't need to be 100 watts. But at the time, that was the PA. And believe me, I've played through 2 412 cabinets in that 100 watt. It is a PA system. It'll take your head off. But that's what he needed. It reminds me of these surfers going down, 50-foot waves. All right. Yeah. Well, you don't really have to do that anymore. With in-ear monitors and a 20 watt amp, you're fine. I mean, you're controlling how loud it is with the monitor mixer, not with how many watts the amp is.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about that transformer that's in there is it sounds big. It doesn't sound small. I just did the demo. It would do the same thing with a 100 watt amp. It works. But the preamp, I didn't change. And I don't know, all these 20 watt amps that you're talking about that don't sound like 100 watt amps, I don't know how the preamp's wired. I don't make a habit of going around to other manufacturers and looking at schematics. It's not my thing.
No.
My thing is to look at the schematics of legends. I got to play through an old Vibroverb, which you have one here. The first thing I did after I played through it was pull up a schematic and look how it was different from a twin, a super, all these deluxe. And it looks to me like what it sounded like was a 40 watt deluxe, which is exactly what the schematic looked like.
Now with this, you talked about the transformer and how pivotal that is.
The output transformer.
Yes. Now in the big boy, you talked about there's an overtone that's deliberate.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily
I'm sure
deliberate,
this one
but
does it too.
Should we try it?
Sure. You got a pair of earplugs, this thing's going to take my head off. I mean, look, it's 20 watts, but it's really loud.
Okay.
You have to turn that thing all the way up through a cabinet, and then this double note shows up that'll take your head off. And as you bring one note down, the other note goes up. You ever hear that? Yeah, that'll work. Turn it all the way up. Turn it all the way up. Sounds like a synthesizer.
And I'm sure they didn't intend that at the time.
I don't know if they intended it or not, but it's really cool. And when
Can I have a try?
Yeah, sure. Here. Did you hear the note?
I heard it.
Yes, there it is.
Cool.
It's
More than
right
that,
there.
I felt it.
So let me show you that Hendrix chord I was talking about. was having fun. Let me tell you, he was having fun.
So try as we might.
So you don't blow my ears.
No, it's okay. No more playing for
I
me.
make my living with these things. I got to be careful.
Likewise, Paul. So some decades
you
later,
asked.
we had to do it, and some decades on, you still can't beat that sensation besides volume. So for a 20-watter, it does the job pretty nice.
Look, I think we could make a 2-watt amp that would make that double note.
The challenge is issued right there.
No.
So what's next for this? What do you see happening next for this line? Or is this...
Well, look, we knew when we came out with the 100 and the 50 that people would be very interested to play through what he played through. Mm-hmm. We always knew, in the end, the play, because of the market the way it is, would be the 20. We knew that the 20 would be something that people would be interested in. And the thing I really like about it is I'm asking it to do things the 100 does, and it's doing it just fine. Mm-hmm. When John Mayer played through one of these, he says, well, people are going to figure out how good Hendrix was because that bass note is overwhelming coming out of a 20-watt amp, and the 100-watt, it'll take your head off.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but we're not having any trouble getting this to do what the 100 does. It's got the same kind of tone.
And I've got to say, it's loud, but it's not punishing.
It's not punishing.
So
it's
brutal,
it's punishing
in a
enough
nice
that I
way.
wanted to wear. It's brutal in a nice way. For me, it sounds like the 100. It's just about as fifth as loud.
But if that's a tagline that you want to use, you're welcome to it.
I don't think my marketing department is going to change all the work it did to
Maybe
release this thing for today. But we've been using this on this road trip, and it has not one time let us down, not once. It's been on a pile of different voltages, there's all kinds of things, and it's just hanging in just tough as nails.
Well, anyone who's going to come to the clinic tonight with Paul is going to hear the amp live in the room, so if that's you, let us know what you thought of it down in the comments below. But equally, just from what you've heard in this video, I want to know your thoughts down there too. And if you want to find out even more information, though I think Paul's pretty much covered everything that there is to cover, you can click the link down in the description below, head to our website, and pick one up for yourself for a surprisingly reasonable price, I had to say. When I heard the details, this thing is priced really well.
I think so. Look, you got to remember.
Get one, folks.
That style amp was used for Sweet Home Alabama and all the police records. Mm-hmm. Clean as a whistle. If you have the courage to turn the first two knobs down, it'll clean way up. The problem is people don't like turning things down to 1.
Maybe not 1. Somewhere between 1 and 2.
Okay.
That works for me.
Okay, fine. But it's not 3 or 4.
No. There's too much of a good thing sometimes.
A Super Reverb, an old black-faced one, starts to break up around 3. These things start to break up around 2. You got to have the courage to turn them down.
Do you have the courage, folks?
There you go.
Check one out for
Challenge all
yourselves.
of them. That's great.
Thank you, Paul.
Well done, Jack.
Thank you very much for watching, guys. Check out the amp on our website, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.